Good afternoon, students. Today in this video, we will learn about functions, how to define a function. In the previous video, we have learned there are two types of functions. First one is built-in function. Second one, user-defined function. Built-in functions are those functions which are with the Python programming language. Such functions we have used like input function, print function, type function we have used in the program. These are the functions which are written. These are the functions which are defined earlier into the. These are the functions which are defined inside the programming language Python. And second one is the user-defined functions. User-defined functions are those functions which is defined by the programmer. The functions which is defined by the programmer, then that kind of functions are known as user-defined functions. Means if you are defining a function, it means that function is not provided by the Python. In this case, if you are defining a function, any function, if you are defining, a programmer is defining, then that kind of functions are known as user-defined functions. In the previous video, we have seen what are the different advantages of functions. The first advantage was it reduces the size of the program. Error correction and detection will become easier. And next one is once you define a function, it can be invoked when you these are the main advantages why to use function. If you are using function in your program, then it reduces the size of the program. Second one is error correction and detection will become easier if you are using a function. And third one is once you define a function, it can be invoked when you require. Means once you have defined a function, that function can be used again and again. As we can see, input function we are using, that function is defined. Whenever you require to take input from the keyboard, then we use input function. You don't need to write anything about how to take input from the keyboard. Just you have to use the input function. If you want to display something on the monitor, on the display device, then we use print function. You don't bother about how it will be printed into on the monitor. You just use print function. Means once that function is defined, that functions can be used again and again without rewriting the code. We will learn in this video how to write a function, a user defined function, and that function you can call it again and again in your program. We will see how to define a function. To define a function, first we need a def keyword. Then after the name of the function, suppose a function name is check function is there. We are writing a function to check whether a number is a prime or not. and the number here is n. This is the function. To write a function, we need to write a def keyword here. This line is function header. To write a function, to define a function, this all is known as function definition. The first line of this function definition is will start with the def keyword, and this check is an identifier, and here is a parameter or argument, you can say, and here is a parameter or argument, and this is the body of the function. From this point to this point, these are the body of the function. This is the same program, but you have defined inside a function. Means this is a function whose name is check, and this function requires a value of type value to check whether a number is a prime number or not. You have defined this function here. While writing your program, first to define a function. To define a function, we have to write def keyword with any identifier here. Means it is the function name of the function, and is the parameter here, and these are the function body. This is the function definition. These all things will be there, and one more thing will be there is the return function. Return we will see in the next example. Once you have written the function, this function I have told you about. If you are using a function in your program, then the size of your program will be reduced. Second is error correction and detection will become easier. And third, once you have written the function, that function will be called or invoked again and again. You don't have to write the same code. Means if you have not written if you have written a function, then you don't have to write the same code in your program. Suppose there is suppose one case is there. Suppose in a program, if you want to check several times, means 10 times, if you want to check whether a number is a prime number or not in your program, in your entire program, you have to check 10 times whether that number is a prime number or not. For once, these number of lines you have to write from here to here. For one number, if you want to check that number whether this number is a prime number or not, from this statement to this statement you have to write for one number. If there are 10 statements are there, then you have to write 10 times you have to write the same code. Means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Means 9. If 9 statements are required to check once whether a number is a prime number or not, but if you want to check 10 times, then it means 90 times you have to write the statement, means 90 different statements will be written, means it will be that this 9 line will be repeated, 9 statements will be repeated 10 times. You can see how your program will become larger. To reduce the size of that program, we can use function. Once you have defined the function, then second one, this was the one advantage, it will reduce the size of your program. Means once you have in your program, if you want to check several times a number is a prime number or not, to check once you have to write 9 lines here in this program. 9 statements are written here. To check 10 different times, 10 different numbers you have, and you want to check it, then 10 different times you have to write, you have to repeat the same line. See, you can save number of lines if you are using function. Second advantage was error correction and detection will become easier. If you are using function, then error correction and detection will become easier. Means if you have written a function, if you have written a function and to check a number whether this number is prime number or not, if you have written a wrong process, means if you have written wrong process, suppose here you have something you have written here, means 3 you have written, means this process is wrong. Using this process you cannot find any number is a prime number or not, and 10 times you have to check the same process you have written 10 times. But if you have written in a function, you have to correct it at one place only. You don't have to correct at 10 different places. You have to correct it only at one place. Means error correction and detection will become easier. Means in this piece of code only there is a error. If you have written in a function, then once at one place you have to change. But without function, if you have written 10 times, then 10 different places you need to change. Means if you are using function, then error correction and detection will become easier. And third point was, once you have written the function, that function can be called again and again. Suppose I am calling this function, this is the same function written here. You can see that function, means check function was written here. You can assume there was a check function. Now I am writing a code after this function. Before you have to write that function which I have erased. After that function I have written int input. Suppose I have written 11 here. I want to check this 11 whether this is a prime number or not. You simply have to write check m here. Means when this code will be executed, this statement will be executed, 11 will be assigned into m, and after the execution of this statement will execute. This statement is a function, check is a function, and m is a parameter here. Means 11 is here, or in that function m will be provided. M will in that function def check n was written. This m was will be copied into n, means the value of n will become 11. Now this function will check whether this number is a prime number or not. If it is a prime number, it will display it is a prime number. Otherwise, it will display it is not a prime number. Suppose in this same program you have written m, you are assigning 8 here. Again you want to check this function, check this 8 with whether it is a prime number or not. Then again you can call this function and you can provide this number. Then this function will check whether this 8 is a prime number or not. Means once you have written that function, before that you have to write the function. Once you have written that function, that function you can call again and again. You don't have to write each and every time the same code here and same code here. If you have not written that function, then you have to write the code here, then you have to write the same code here. In this way you are saving the place. This function is defined once, and that function can be used, can be invoked, can be called again and again, and each time we can change the value of this m. in this next statement, if you have written 13 here, then check you have written, means this function will be called this. When this statement will be executed, then this is the function. This function will execute this definition. It will go at this definition place, and the value of m will be assigned into this n, and it will check the value 13 is a prime number or not. It means once you have defined a function, that function you can call it again and again. It is in this way. This is the function calling statements. These are the function calling statements, and m here is a parameter, and this parameter is known as actual parameter, and this parameter is known as formal parameter. While defining a function, you have written a parameter there, and this parameter is known as formal parameter, and this parameter is known as, while calling this function, you are passing the parameter, then this parameter is known as actual parameters. Suppose you want to call this function in this way. I am writing another example here, a small function. I am writing here add n m. In this there are two parameters. Print sum enter. Suppose I'm assigning directly it. X is 10, y is 20. Now you are calling the function add x and y here. In the next statement you have written x 75, y 5. You can see here. Once you have defined the function in the same program, this is one program here. First you have to define this function in this way. Then you are providing the value x in this value x. In this variable x, you are providing 10. In this variable y, you are providing 20. Now you are calling this function. This is the add function, and this function's definition is written here. When this statement will be executed, the value of x and y, means the value of x is 10 and y is 20. Along with this function, it will come to execute this one. Means it will go to its function, to its definition. Means this add function is here. You are calling this function. It will go from this place to this place. Execution will go from this place to this place, and the value of x will be copied into n, and the value of y will be copied into y. Means this is the actual parameter will be copied into formal parameter. The first parameter will be copied into first parameter of this, and the second parameter will be copied into second parameter of this. Means first actual parameter will be copied into first formal parameter of this function definition, and second actual parameter will be copied into this second parameter, formal parameter in this function definition. Means the value of x and y will be copied into n and m, and the value of n is 10 here. 10 will be assigned here, and y 20 will be assigned here. In this statement, n plus m is 30 will be assigned into sum, and print sum will be displayed. In this way you have to define, means once you have written this function, again and again you have to call this function. But if you have written like this, you have called this function in this way, add, you have written only one parameter, then it is invalid. It is invalid calling. Means invalid means this function add is defined with two parameters. Whenever you call this function you have to pass two parameters, two actual parameters from where you are calling this function. Means this function is defined with two parameters, but if you are passing one parameter from here, then it is invalid. You will get an error. Means number of parameters is defined into this function. While calling this function, you have to provide that number of values. You can directly also provide values, 30, 70, directly you can provide. Means 30 will be assigned into m, n and 70 will be assigned into m in this way. This number of parameters, you can see here in the function definition, there are two parameters here, two formal parameters are there. While calling this function, you have to provide two parameters, two actual parameters from here. If you're providing one parameter, then you will get error. If you're providing more than two parameters, then also you will get error. Means this function is defined with the name add, and there are two parameters. While calling this function, you have to use two parameters to call this function or to invoke this function. This is how we can define a function, a user defined function. In the next video, we will see what are the different things are there in functions. We will see in next video. Thank you.